If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First, it's free. Second, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else podcasts are heard. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast, all in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
The stories, the hustle, the grind, the push, the pain, the time, love, the sweat, the tears, goes beyond the lights, the stage, the fame, and the message stays the same. You're listening to the Indie Takeover.
Will it ever go away? Or is it here to stay? Will it always be this way? The song says, I'm so confused. Don't know what you're gonna do. My testimony says suicide. We came to tell you, don't trust the voice in your head telling you that it's done. The good news is, as long as he's on the throne, you say,
it's not over till God says it's over. It's not the end, Lord, not finished. There may be mountains in your way. The God that we serve moves mountains every day.
you just have to have the faith and know. Say,
It's not over.
come on. Verse 2 says you've been blaming the world for everything that's happened to you. Somewhere along the way you've become bitter of everything. We came to encourage you, don't trust the voice in your head saying that you're done. The good news is, y'all, you have just begun. Till God says it's over. Say, it's not the end. You are not finished. There may be some mountains standing in your way. But the God we serve, He moves mountains every single day. You just have to have the faith and know, say, come on, we came to tell you that you shall live. You're not gonna die. Come on, you'll survive. Because so God says, it's not the end. You are not finished. There may be some mountains that are gonna stand in your way. But the God we serve, He moves mountains
welcome to the Indie Takeover with Jeremy Gibson. I'm your host all the way from Oakland, California, and I have one of the most special guests of the week here with me, all the way from Los Angeles, California, SoCal, a good friend of mine and someone who I feel is probably one of the greatest directors this side of the heavens, simply because one, his heart is just so great for people, for creativity, for men. Anyway, Jason McGee, all the way from Tinseltown. Well, no, Tinseltown is Hollywood. That's not.
I definitely don't live there.
Right. But listen, we got Jason McGee as our guest, and I'm going to let him introduce himself in his own words to those that do not know him. I don't know. If you're listening to this, I'm shocked that you don't know him. If you don't, but you probably do because he's that kind of guy. So, Jason, go ahead and tell him who you are, what you do, where you're from.
What up, y'all? It's Jason McGee. Yes, as you said, I am a choir director. I am the founder of Jason McGee and the Choir, signed to MyBlock Inc. with Mr. Warren Campbell.
Woo, woo.
In addition, I am also the pastor of worship and arts at the City of Refuge with Bishop Noel Jones. And yeah, I'm a gospel artist who does so much more than just that, but pretty much everything in the choir vein.
And lead vocals on the hit song, It's Not About Us.
Yes, recorded, oh my gosh, it's been 14 years since we recorded that song.
14. They tried to give me that song in church, and I was like, listen, I'm not him.
What people don't realize is I recorded that song with strep throat.
Really?
Yeah, that's why it sounds so rough the whole time. Yeah,
you out here singing with ailments? Look, and look what God did with it.
I know, right? God is all right with me. That's for sure.
Come on. So listen, Jason, I'm excited. There's so much I want to talk about today, simply because this is a good season for you right now. So much is going on. You got an album coming out. You just released a single, which I love. Like, I love the content, the message that it gives. Like, especially like with this show in particular, we deal with a lot of issues that creatives and independent artists kind of deal with. And I think that song right now is like a real like heart hitter, with the things that we kind of deal with. So we'll get into that. But first, I want to talk about you and how you started on this musical journey. What got you here?
What's crazy is music was never what I wanted to do. It was the thing that I did in church. I've been directing the choir since I was 14 years old. My mother was my choir director. And she put me up one day. She called the church where we were supposed to sing. She called and said that she was sick. And she basically tricked me into directing. And she knew that I could do it. But as far as I was concerned, directing choirs and doing anything music-based was only really for Sunday morning. And I was really passionate about it. I loved it. But the idea of taking it professional never, ever, ever crossed my mind. I moved to Los Angeles for theater. But it became very apparent that music was really pulling at me and that I was, staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning studying music. And it was like the only thing that I could see myself doing, even though I didn't think I was doing it, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. But as I looked into the future, I always saw myself directing and I always saw myself doing something with music. And I didn't see myself acting, even though I was in theater school. And so I just told God, I said, if this is what you want me to do, if this is the direction you want me to go in, then you have to make it good for me. Like, you have to make me not regret following you. And I gotta say, man, it's been incredible the whole time.
He made it good.
Yes, it really has. And I don't regret it. I'm head over heels, very much in love with what I do. I'm still very humbled and gracious that God has been so good to me in this vein. I mean, what choir director gets signed to a label? You know what I mean? Like, what choir director is been able to do commercial things and then put God on such a commercial stage like I've been able to do. So I'm grateful, very grateful for that.
I love it. I want to go back to you moving to LA because you're originally from Bakersfield, right?
Bakersfield, California.
Bakersfield. For those that don't know, Bakersfield is
oh God.
Bakersfield is a city.
It's a city. It's a city. It's definitely a city where people live.
Yeah.
They shouldn't live there, but they do.
It's a city you drive through to get to LA.
You sneeze and you
right. So I had no idea that you moved to LA for theater. I think that's very interesting because I'm going to make this about me for a moment. I wanted to be on Broadway so bad growing up. Like I wanted to be, but I can't dance. So, and if you're on Broadway, you got to be a triple threat. You got to be able to sing, dance, and act.
Only if you're doing musicals.
Yeah, well, I only wanted to do musicals.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, so I can't dance. So
no.
So
no.
So yeah, that's it. But so you went to LA in hopes of becoming a theater actor, and in that a lot of I think the journey that a lot of creatives and independent artists have is that they start doing one thing and it's very clear that God has a different plan. Was your transition from doing what you initially were passionate about, was that easy? Like, I know you said you talked to God and you said, listen, God, you got to make this good for me, but I know we see you now, but that journey from accepting like, okay, listen, theater may not be, unless you still do theater and I just don't know it. You could be doing some.
I know.
Oh, okay.
My last theater thing was almost 10 years ago. I did Rent almost 10 years ago.
Well, that's 10 years ago is not that long ago. Like, no.
Yeah, I mean that was I won't say that I do theater. I still very much love it. Mm-hmm. I still very much am inspired by it, but no, I haven't. That was the last thing I did, and I really just wanted to do that. And to answer your question, it was easy actually.
Okay.
It was pretty easy to it was just kind of obvious of what it was. I wasn't booking. I had a commercial agent. I had one of the best commercial agents in Los Angeles, and I wasn't booking anything, but then I was getting hired left and right for music. And my first professional gig was opening up the 2004 BET Awards with Kanye West.
Yeah.
When he premiered Jesus Walk.
Yeah.
And that was my first professional gig. And from that moment on, it's like every week I was doing something music-based and I was making money and I was, and I was happy and I found myself in love with it. And I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? It was way easier to leave theater than to stay.
Right.
So no, it wasn't hard at all.
Do you feel that the ease of it all was because of where you were? Like LA, for those, I think everybody outside of LA will feel like, oh, LA is the land of opportunity. Like there's something, but I really believe that it just, it has to happen authentically, organic. Like it doesn't happen that way for everyone, and so it's clear that God's hand has been on you to be able to, where he can entrust in you, as long as I've known you, which has been years.
Yeah.
No, but as long as I've known you, like the level of integrity and just how genuine you are with people, with your work, is very admirable. And I think God has to be able to trust people, to function at that level. Like you, everything I've seen, whether it be in church, whether it be on an award show, like you operate at such a high level of professionalism. Is that something that you've always kind of possessed, or you learned that from being around such great people, or how did that develop?
My mom has always been really driven to excellence. She's always been my mother, my grandmother, very detailed women. And as I mentioned earlier, my mom was my director. So I used to watch the way she operated in this and how much she put her all into it. Like, she used to help make the clothes for the women in the choir when we needed uniforms, and then she would go direct them. And then, so that's kind of where I got my training, and that's kind of what I really remember, like, seeing about putting everything into what you do. And then I don't know. I think I'm just a very detailed person, and I've sang tenor on so many different events, and I've been in some of the worst possible situations. And I always vowed that when I got in a position of power, where I could hire people and really be in charge of something, that I wouldn't allow singers to go through the things that I've gone through. And then I just am really OCD about things. So I infuse that as well. I'm really organized. And so I infuse my OCD with a lot of training and a lot of experience. And then, and then I watch how Beyonce does it. And I watch how, I've worked with Madonna before, and I've watched how she does it. And I watched how they put their all into what they do. And for some reason in gospel music, we don't feel like we're supposed to do that, or we have to do that because of the anointing. But I disagree with that. I highly disagree with that. I think you have to like put everything into whatever skill you've been given. And mine happens to be in gospel music. So I'm not gonna sleep or cut any corners because it's gospel music. To me, I should be more detailed because it's for God.
Right. Absolutely. I love the fact that you challenge in what you do. You challenge others of your peers in this industry or genre specifically, to up their level. Your group always looks good. They always sound good. And and now I understand it, because you said your mom was the same way. So, you have your hand in it, but it's a reflection of you. Like, you give a very good standard to for people to build off of. In your writing, or the song recently that you just released, It's Not Over, the message is very, like I said, it's a heart hitter, and I know you've shared not too long ago about your struggles with suicide and just dealing with life issues. So many people deal with that. And if you don't mind us kind of taking a journey down that path for a moment, and just talking about, you're overcoming it. You shared a story on your Facebook, and so for those that did you share it on Instagram too? I don't know, but I read it on Facebook. But you shared a story about a moment where you being transparent about it, pretty much helped someone else be free from that same struggle. So for those that didn't hear it, would you mind sharing what that was, and how you yourself overcame?
I think if I may digress for just a hot minute, I think overcoming it is a daily struggle. It's not, it's not a light switch. You know what I mean? Like, I can say that I will 95% never do it. But it doesn't mean that 5% doesn't tug at me all the time. And I think it's important that people are very real about when you struggle with suicide, that we always think that deliverance means one day I'm just going to be completely over it and I'll never think about it again. No, because that completely contradicts what Paul said about the thorn in the flesh.
Right.
There's always going to be something tugging at you to do something, so there is always that 5% that's lurking. around when things get down. Like some people just get sad if things get down. People like me, we go to the extreme of sadness and we become suicidal, you know. And one day in church, I decided to open up about how tough that week had been, and that for the first time in a long time, I considered it. And, you know, I was coming from a place of deliverance because I really felt like God met me that day at church. And I just felt like, I don't know, I felt something tugging in me to share it. And a week later, a woman actually gave me a card. And she said, when you get home, please read this. And I said, okay, no worries, I definitely will. And she's like, okay. And admittedly, I didn't read it. I put it aside for months. And it was crazy that I did that. And she even asked me about it, and God forgive me, I lied. And she was like, did you read it? And I was like, yeah. She's like, it's crazy, right? And I was like, oh man, it's crazy. And, you know, and God forgive me, you know, because I lied to this woman, but I didn't want to let her know that I completely disrespected what she did, which was obviously something that was very vulnerable for her. And so I just so happened to, you know, suicide reared its ugly head again at the top of this year. And I was really, really, really down for a few days. And I was going through old mail and found this card, and I opened it and read what she wrote finally. And what delivered her was my testimony, but then what turned around and delivered me that day was her testimony. And so it was kind of a full circle. It was a full circle moment. It was a moment, you know, that, you know, I treasured to this day. And it's a moment that always reminds me that, you know, God is literally just a conversation away from you.
Right.
So if you can get over the ugly hump, if you can get over the moment where you want to take your own life, if you can just get over that, God is really waiting. I always say God is waiting at the end of your rope.
Right.
So yeah, it was a moment.
I think it's so key of you to say that deliverance is a daily thing.
Absolutely.
With being an artist or a creative, I say this all the time, like, we're very transparent, very vulnerable. Anytime we get on the stage, all the time. Right. Just like Erykah Badu has said, I say it all the time. She said she's very sensitive about her stuff. And I think it's so true. Like, we don't realize like what we put out there. And I mean, we may realize it, but as consumers or fans, we may not realize how much of themselves that artists are putting out anytime they get up, you know, especially in gospels. They're sometimes communicating or conveying a message that they themselves aren't convinced of, or, you know, need to hear themselves, but now they have to, you know, so that challenge. And I think what I really love now is this whole surge of mental health awareness and self-care. And I want to ask you, what do you find has been your self-care moment or habit that kind of keeps you present, so to speak?
I think I'm still developing that, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I'm still developing self-care, because self-care for me used to be standing on stage and directing. You know, it was a thing that I released. I released everything when I threw my arms out there, which is probably why I have bad shoulders now. You know, but then, you know, then directing became my job. So then I had to develop, you know, then I started going to the gym a lot. But then that, you know, that can feel like work sometimes.
Right.
So I'm still kind of developing what my self-care regimen is. You know, there are days I take a little drive. There's this like outlet mall that's maybe 45 minutes from my house, and it's not very good at all. It's kind of horrible. But it's a beautiful drive to get there. So there are days that I will literally just hop in the car. I'll put my phone in the seat so that I don't look at it. And I just take the drive. I take the drive for about 45 minutes along the coast. And I go hang out at this outlet mall. I go walk around a little bit, maybe pick up a couple things. And then when I'm ready to go home, I go home. And that's the day that I'm not allowed to talk about work. I'm not allowed to talk about music. I'm not allowed to talk about problems. I have to literally just, you know, walk around a raggedy mall
Right.
and just be to myself, and I don't have to be Jason McGee that day. That day I just get to be Jason.
I think that's so good. Like we all need moments, like whatever it is, you know, a moment to kind of just step outside of what we're, you know, so often consumed, you know, with.
Yeah.
Now, Jason, you don't just do music. So, and of course, this show is not just about gospel artists or not just about singers, directors, writers, whatever. We have all different types of creatives, whether it be entrepreneurs, producers, managers, background singers, whatever. But you also have a very, what's the word? I don't know. Probably some big word. Let me insert a big word right there. You have that eye for like fashion and design, and I don't know if people know that, but like you are like you're top notch. Like I mean, where did that come from? Was that also, you know, an influence of your mom? Because I know you said she made clothes for the choir and whatnot, but you have like your touch is like that can be a brand on its own. Like,
and it's about to become one. Thank you very much.
Listen, I'm a prophet. I'm a prophet. I didn't even know that. Did you tell me that? You didn't tell me before this conversation.
No, I know. No. I haven't actually told anybody. Okay. So
look,
you and all your listeners are the first ones to hear it right now.
Exclusive.
No, you know, yes, I mean, going back to my mom, once again, you know, I spent a lot of time with her growing up. She was a single mother. And so I learned how to color match, I think, from my mom. Mm-hmm. You know, I learned how to, you know, as far as where, you know, the socks matching your pants and just little stuff like that. And then my grandmother was a huge influence as well. She was actually more into colors and clothes than my mom was. So my grandmother would invite me over to the house when she would pack to go like to the national conventions. We were raised Kojic. And
come on.
I would and I would actually help her pack. I would help her put things together and help her pack and put looks together for all the days. And then when I moved to LA, one of the jobs, actually the best job I've ever had, I worked for Gucci for about 5 years. And that's where I started understanding textiles, and I started understanding fabrics, and I started understanding texture, and I started understanding prints and patterns and the cut of things, and, you know, tailoring this and hemlines and just double vents and pleats and darts and just all the things that go into fashion. And that's where I think I really developed this eye for what works and what doesn't work. And so, you know, then I also used to work for MAC Cosmetics. So I began to understand makeup. And so when it comes to my choirs, you infuse music with fashion, with makeup and beauty, and you kind of have what I do.
I love it. So this explains everything. I mean, I remember it was at Stellar Weekend a couple years ago. I don't know. But it was at Love and Lyric, and they got up and they just, I mean, this is literally a Friday night, a Thursday night, you know, like you don't have to be, you know, it's not Choir Fest right now. It's not, you know, it's not the red carpet, but they were so well put together. Like, just, I love that. You know, I love that you put that energy into it beyond, and it doesn't look necessarily churchy. You know, no offense for those that wear choir robes, but you know, it's a unique style that's why I say it's definitely uniquely Jason. You know, so I'll look forward to seeing what this brand and this, you know.
There's a lot happening. Definitely a lot happening. We're going to start with t-shirts, and then we're going to kind of move on from there. But it's some merchandise stuff that we're doing actually for the choir. So
that's dope.
You know, sorry, man. You got to represent yourself. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not allowed to show up toe up. They can't show up toe up.
Right.
So
I love that. So there was a conversation recently about
R&B being dead, or R&B being a lost genre, or not really having. So I want to talk about gospel music and where we are. I think there is such a wide scope of what you can do in gospel, because gospel more so is the content versus the styling, because you can do traditional gospel music and then switch it and do this trap gospel, and the message stays the same,
Yeah.
But you, as a choir director, as a artist, as a creator, where do you feel gospel music is headed as far as its sound? Because we got Kanye, and the Sunday service, Sunday service choir. You got that. You got a lot of other artists. You got Justin Bieber. Now there's like this, worship music. It's all these quote unquote like fad type movements with gospel.
Right.
But this is something that you've been doing. It's not new to you. It's not, something
Not
that
a fad.
Right. It's not a fad for you. So where do you feel gospel music is headed with all that's kind of going on right now?
I think gospel music is hopefully making the comeback that it well deserves, being a little bit more in everyone's home all the time. It becomes more of a household genre, just like pop, just like rock, just like all these other genres. Hopefully it goes back to the time when it was really cool to sing gospel music. The time when Kirk Franklin was making his huge boom, when Yolanda Adams was doing the battle, when choirs were like going hard on stage. That's what I'm hoping, and I'm grateful that the big names in music, whether it be gospel or not, are putting their energies, efforts, and money behind gospel music. No, it's not a fad for me, but unfortunately, there's an entire audience that I may never reach if not for the big names exposing what we do to these people. So rather than ostracizing them for wanting to do gospel, whether it be Kanye, Justin Bieber, or Snoop, I'm appreciative that they are advertising, what it is that the rest of us do, because it really just introduces a whole world to what we do. You know what I mean? And it's not my job to determine if what they do is real or not. That's
right.
Not my responsibility. That's God's job. Those are his children. And so I'm just grateful that they're sending everybody our way. You know what I mean? Because when they send them our way, those fans will no doubt find the ones of us who are authentic in what we do.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I hope, my prayer is that, that gospel music takes on a very commercial approach and isn't afraid to go into the homes of millions of people.
Yeah.
Isn't afraid to change the way our message is put out there. Because the message is always the same. God is love.
Right.
And as long as we keep that in mind, we also shouldn't be too afraid to go into the homes of a bunch of people who will never enter our churches.
Right.
So that's my hope for gospel music. I hope that we finally get an on-air award at the Grammys again.
Yes.
I hope that our Stellar Awards gets millions and millions and millions of viewers every time it airs. That's my hope. That's my prayer.
Absolutely. And with your album, this single, so you recorded this live album, and so there's live albums that come out, right? Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend, but the feedback that I heard was nuts. And it doesn't surprise me, because I feel like in the songs that you have released, like, Promises and Never Let Me Go, and even your new single, like, there is a sound that is different. I won't say it's commercial, but it gives a different breath of fresh air to what gospel music tends to be. And I know a lot of people feel like, the West Coast ain't, not really gospel heavy, but there's an audience for it. There's an audience for it. And I feel like if we are headed into the direction of entering to the homes of millions, Jason McGee is one of the front runners for that, ready to go, and is that something that you feel with this album you're ready to do, or what is your hopes for this album once it's released? What would you like to see the effect and the impact of this work?
I would love to be. That's a great question, by the way. I would love. Yes, obviously, like we release, we hope to be millions. You know what I mean? That's we would be honored to go into the homes of millions. But for me, the effect is a little bit greater than just album sales. Mm-hmm. For me, the effect is hopefully change. The effect is hopefully people begin to respect and view gospel music as a very competitive genre. Meaning, and I don't mean competitive within, I mean competitive like we produce great music just like anybody else does. Right. Our production is just as strong as anyone else's. So for the sake of gospel music, I really hope that people begin to respect it again. And then in the sake of spirituality, I'm praying that these songs cause people to start having real conversations in their families and their churches. I pray that these songs really deliver some folks. I pray that these songs really begin to break chains for people, again, who will never enter our churches. That's been my driving force since I was a kid. I wanted to get the people that will never walk into the church. And so when we, decided to record this live album in 2016, mind you, when we decided to record this live album, when I was asked what kind of songs I wanted to record, for me, it was, I need to get songs that send a message to everyone that will never come into church that God can meet you where you are.
Yeah.
The beautiful thing about God is he's omnipresent. He is everywhere at the same time. And a lot of churches don't have church on Thursday afternoons, but that might be when someone's going through it.
Right.
We hope to give them the album that they can play and get a little bit of God, at that time.
I love that. Love it. Love it. God anytime.
Anytime.
So,
because that's what he is. He's anytime God.
And I don't think we acknowledge that, especially I think more so those that kind of grow up in church, and we get it and we take for granted, like, listen, he's everywhere, and he's very there accessible all the time, very accessible, but we make him very mysterious and hidden,
and we make him conditional.
Right.
Like he's not going to, like I heard someone say, you gotta, like, such and such isn't being blessed because they stopped working for God, because they stopped working for their church. And I was like, whoa, two different things.
Right.
Two completely different things. Working for God and working for your church are two separate locations.
Right.
And God is not conditional like we are. He's just not. Like, because if that's the case, we'd all be dead.
Right. And truth be told, folks are working in positions at churches that God never wanted them to be in. And people are
Please don't get me started on that.
But we become loyal to a position or to a place, or and it's like, and God is calling you to do things so far beyond what we could even imagine, but because of comfort or because of fear of being uncomfortable, we stay there. Yep. I find it very inspiring to know that what we are doing here, like even in this conversation, is touching creatives that, my vision is this, that there's somebody like driving in their car that put the podcast on or whatever, and they're listening, and they have like that inspiring moment. They have that, but just from listening to what we're saying today, which is what I want to ask you. What has been inspiration or kind of like that push for you? Besides, I know you mentioned your mother and your grandmother, but like, what do you pull from either with your directing, your writing? Like, what are you pulling from currently, and even in the past? Like, who are some of the ones that have influenced what you do?
The ones who've been there's kind of a range. One of my greatest influences, actually, I've said my mom and grandmother, but it's actually my grandfather too. He's been one of my greatest inspirations in I'll say, in leadership, in the way that I lead things, in the way that I lead people. Ricky Dillard, Orlando Draper, Tyrone Block have been my three greatest choir directing influences. Like, no one does it better than those three. And somehow they all three do it completely differently. And for those that don't know, Tyrone Block is the director of the Thompson Community Singers, Milton Brunson and the Thompson Community Singers. So those are my directing influences, and a little bit of them mixed with a little bit of theater kind of created Jason McGee as a choir director. Writing wise, I don't know that I've ever written a song based on outside influences. Meaning every song that I've ever touched has always come from something I personally may be dealing with, or a personal message that I wanted to say even to myself. You know, everything's always been very personal with a lot of the songs that I write. And so, yeah, and then singing, and then directing is them, and then a lot of my style is very the way that I phrase notes and the way that I like to tell a story vocally comes from like a Donald Lawrence and a Richard Smallwood, you know, but it's also all very theatrical. So I pace a song like a theater piece would be paced. You know, the beginning, middle, and end, finding where the climax is and the resolution, and that's how I pace a song. But I do need to clear up one thing. My latest single, It's Not Over, was not written by me. I only wrote a couple lines in it, but Tammy Hadden and Gerald Hadden are the ones who actually wrote that song. And they spoke to, Tammy's dealt with suicide before in the past, so they spoke to things that we've all dealt with. Right. They wanted to be really vulnerable with the song.
Well, those two are also very awesome people.
Yeah, they are.
I love the fact that, and you've worked with them for, you know, years. Like, you all.
They wrote It's Not About Us.
Yeah, like that. Like that team. Like, you all are like nuts.
Two of them, me and Marcus Hodge. Marcus Hodge is the guy that you will always hear doing all of our music.
Yeah.
For those that don't know who Marcus is my producer and MD. So typically Gerald will come up with the music concept. Tammy will do some lyrics to it. I'll come in and make sure that it sounds good for a choir. So I'll structure the song and then add a few more lyrics that make sense for a choir. Marcus will come in at the very end and put all the color to the music. And so between the four of us, you know, we just work. It works really well together. So we're grateful.
That's dope. Your current position at City of Refuge, as worship pastor or pastor of worship, let me get it right. What's the correct title? I don't.
In my technical, very dramatic title.
Because I grew up Kojic too.
It is pastor of worship arts.
Pastor of worship arts. Listen, that's what gets you in the kingdom.
Right, title.
Right. No, but how long have you been in that position?
For 2 years now.
2 years.
Gerald Hadden had served in the position for a few years before me. Okay. And when they moved, he bequeathed it to me.
Come on, big words. Listen.
Them church words.
Do you feel are you able to move in that? Let me not say. Do you feel with this position in the church, you're able to kind of help mold maybe I won't say the culture, but because there's definitely a shift. I think just worldwide, like in the church, there's a shift. Yeah. And I think you're a good person to have in that place. So whoever made the recommendation or whatever, good move, because your hand on the pulse of where things are, especially in our region. I think the West Coast is uniquely different when it comes to church and music and everything. do you feel that you are able to kind of introduce newer things? Because listen, I loved what I saw New Year's Eve. Like, that was dope, and I like how much of that was you. Like, I think the things that I'm seeing are very uniquely Jason.
I don't want to take all the credit.
Okay, be humble.
No, One Body. It was called One Body, One Sound. That was a concert that we did at the church, and we did it about 5 years ago, actually, under Gerald's leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was Gerald's idea to bring everybody together, and he wanted to do a concert featuring everybody in one night. But he didn't know what to call it. And so myself and a young lady by the name of Tamaya Petaway, who works with Endemol Shine, the company that does like American Idol and all these other kind of shows or whatever, created the term One Body, One Sound. And but then when Gerald left, it was, how do we do this? For me, it was, how do I do this with my way attached to it? Like, what is the vision that what do I want to say? Like, as a leader, you have to determine what you want to say in a very changing, as you mentioned, a very changing climate.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to say? What do you feel like God wants you to say? And so for me, it was, I wanted to say something in a much bigger production way, and not allow people to be afraid of that. I wanted to say, we don't have to be afraid of the word performance in church. We don't have to be afraid to call something a show in church. It is okay.
Yeah.
It is okay to call that. Your heart position is what makes it anointed. Your dedication to the spiritual aspect of it is what makes it from God. But you have a responsibility to the skills that you have. You have a responsibility to perfect them. You have a responsibility to make them effective. And it is okay to call something a show, because you are showing something.
Right.
It's not necessarily just a flesh term. It is what it is. You're showing something, and it is a performance. You know what I mean? And like Kiera Sheard said it best, there shall be a performance.
Yeah.
Actually, Jonathan Nelson said it, but with Kiera let it, there shall be a performance, and I just believe in those things. So to answer my long answer to your question, as they've all been.
No, you're good.
Is as a leader at the City of Refuge, yes, I'm able to create new programs and new things within my department to meet the changing climate. I pray a lot. I talk to God a lot about what I'm supposed to do, and it seems that things just fall into place. We've just introduced a dance ministry to the department that wasn't there before, and now we're about to roll out a whole hip hop line to our music ministry, because we've got rappers in the church that we didn't even know we had. So now the dance ministry is about to roll out a hip hop sector. So for me, it's about not being afraid to understand what the world needs, and then and then we answer the question.
Right.
If the world is asking a question, it's our responsibility as the church to answer the question. So often we think that we're not supposed to conform to what they want. They're supposed to come in and do what we say. And it's like, no, that's self-righteous.
Right.
Even the Lord meets people at their need. So if there is a need in the world, we as the church have a responsibility to answer that need and show people, nah, you can come over here and we got it all over here. So if you rap, yeah, we'll teach you how to do it. If you dance, sure, come right here. And as long as we got God in the heart, as long as we honor him first,
right,
and as long as he remains the main focus of what we do, I think he's glad for that.
Absolutely.
So that's my responsibility as a leader.
Absolutely. We're gonna wrap it up, but there's so much more that I want to talk about. So we're probably gonna have to bring you on for another episode just to talk some more. But I want to end, or kind of bring it to a final piece with you as an influencer in what you do. Where do you see yourself, let's say, in the next 5 years from now? Where do you want to see you, your work, your choir, your ministry? What's your prayer or your focus? If you may not know, but
I definitely know.
Okay. All right. There we go.
It's very me to know that answer. The main word I can say is global.
Okay.
In the next 5 years, my prayers have always been to touch the world, not just the country, not just locally. So I see my choir becoming the choir to do that.
Yeah.
I see my choir getting on very, very humongous stages with huge artists and literally touching the world.
Yeah.
I see us doing television. I see us doing theater. I see us moving around and really opening so many doors for choirs and reminding people that choirs are really freaking cool.
Right.
We are. It's a really cool thing to be a part of. I think it's just the way we approach. We will probably never wear another choir robe. But unless we're working for a job and they put us in them, which they love to do. So, but other than that, no, I think global is where I'm headed for sure.
Well, listen, that'll be our prayer that we echo for you, because I want to see you global. Can you hear me? A little bit.
Now I can.
Okay, I said that'll be our prayer for you, to echo that you will be global, that your impact. Because I love that. I think that it's not far-reaching. I think it's definitely in what God will entrust in you, because you've done so much in what you have been given now. So we're gonna wrap up, because that's the time that we have for today. Sounds like a Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood ending.
Right.
But yeah, I'm definitely gotta have you back just to share some more of your experience in the industry, your expertise, your perspective, because I know you have a number of things you could share with us. But as in indie takeover tradition, I have to ask you a very unique question, and I'm gonna tailor this specifically to you, because I am a theater fan. Right. So it's a very simple question. And you tell me, what has been your favorite stage production
that I've been a part of, or that I've seen?
That you've seen. Well, let's do both. Let's do one you've been a part of and one that you've seen.
One that I've seen, my very favorite thing actually was Fela. I saw Fela on Broadway a few years ago, and my mind was completely blown. I could not believe what I was watching, how amazing and just electrifying it was. It didn't last very long on Broadway, because it was a very specific thing, but it was amazing. And my favorite production that I've ever been a part of, it's a toss-up between a show that I toured with for 2 years called We Be I Me. It's by the Black Gents of Hollywood, which I helped start this theater company. And that's what took me to New York for a while. And Rent. Being a part of Rent in 2011 it was my dream role, so it was nice to be a part of that.
Hold up, you started a theater company in LA and we didn't talk about this?
Yeah, because I probably give too long of answers in other departments, so I don't know if we have time. But
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, so just a little bit about it. Okay, go. What is it?
I'll make it quick. It's called the Black Gents of Hollywood. We started a show in 2006 called We Be I Me. There were 8 brothers. It's the story of a gentleman's last 24 hours on death row for the murder of his wife. And the inside of his mind is going, and he's writing things down. And we, as the other actors, we play the different parts of him at different times in his life through monologue. And a group of brothers and I, and then in 2007, we started this theater company called the Black Gents of Hollywood. And we did this show for 2 years. Now there's a show called Black Angels Over Tuskegee in New York that's been in New York, I think, since 2009 or 10. And so they've been in New York for 10 years off Broadway and through this company, and they're still rolling.
Listen, okay. Next episode, it's theater Jason McGee. Right, because apparently there's a whole world that we didn't know, and I'm sitting here talking about the choir, and there's so much more left. Jason, what are you doing? No,
all right, man. One day I'm gonna write a book.
It's dope. See, come on, author, philanthropist, stylist, designer, choir director extraordinaire.
I have a theme for people. Anybody in spirituality and ministry. My theme is you have to be all things to all people all the time.
And you are those things. Listen, I am impressed. I'm encouraged. I think it's so dope that you are putting your all in everything that you are and have been created to do. I think that's so dope. And if no one got anything else from today's episode, listen, put your all in it. Like, there's no reason to limit yourself, to limit God. The possibilities are literally endless. Like, it's crazy. So Jason, please tell our listeners where we can follow you, where we can connect, and just whatever else you want to end with.
You can find me on all things social media at I am Jason McGee. That's I am JASON my choir is J. It's everything on social media at J McGee Choir or Jason McGee and the Choir. Yeah, that's where you can find me. Anything that says I am Jason McGee or J McGee Choir.
I love it. Listen, we'll have it tagged in the promo, all that stuff. But listen, Jason, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your talent. Thank you for just giving of who you are to us, specifically today, but just overall, thank you so much. You all can tune in again to the Indie Takeover on freedomradio.com as well as Apple and Spotify podcasts. This is your host, Jeremy Gibson, and this is the Indie Takeover.
Promises.